Warning, spoilers ahead for the final episode of Gen V. Finally, it's official. It had almost become one of those secret but not really secret things. The man covered in flame scars is Godolkin, the one who first worked on the project itself, and even gave his name to the university god Yu. Clearly in the last episode, they tried to build some kind of conspiracy, suggesting that Cypher is somehow trying to extract information from him. But if you follow this channel, you already know that I believe something completely different, and it's also the general feeling among part of the audience. Because since Cypher clearly shows psychic abilities that allow him to control other characters, it's much more likely that the one being controlled is actually Cypher's body itself. While the real hidden villain of Gen V is Godolkin, this man branded and consumed by fire. Today, though, we won't only talk about the relationship between Godolkin and Cypher, since we've already discussed it in other videos. Today, we're diving into what I think is the destiny of this character. A destiny that little by little is becoming more and more probable, judging from the events of this second season. Events that could even lead us directly to the 5th season of The Boys. So, guys, welcome or welcome back to Contingency Plans. I'm Failsafe. And as always, I remind you of the usual things every YouTuber says. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you feel like it, and most importantly, share your opinion in the comments, since today we're really in the mood for theories. So with that said, let's begin today's analysis, and as you know, I always like to start by putting all the clues in order. Most of the clues we're going to talk about are little traces that have been left slowly over time, mainly by Cypher himself, or by the people who have interacted with him throughout the story. And we're talking about 3 main things, and again I remind you that in this video I take for granted that Cypher is nothing more than a body controlled by the real villain, Godolkin. So let's look at these 3 scenes. The first one takes place in episode 5, where Sister Sage is talking to Cypher, and while mentioning the training she's doing with Marie Moreau, a character who has now become literally capable of performing miracles, she hints that apparently Cypher has little time left. That's the key word you need to remember, because it will come back later with another clue. The second clue happens inside the prison where Jordan talks to Cypher, and obviously Cypher provokes him, referring to what happened during the fight against Marie when Cypher, thanks to his powers, managed to take full control of Jordan's body. Yet even though the villain is clearly trying to provoke the hero, Jordan provokes him back, saying that when Cypher was inside him, he could feel it, and especially feel how much pain he was in, which means that the character, whoever he really is suffering deeply. Then we move to the third clue, and to me this one is the most evident of all. It comes from episode 6, the last one released. Cypher talks to Polarity, who's dealing with brain damage caused by his powers, and in that moment, Cypher says a very strange line. Time comes for everyone, even for the Soupies. Now notice how it's as if this character has a ticking clock running out, which could be about aging, and remember we're talking about Godolkin, a man who should be more than 100 years old at this point, and who is clearly in pain, slowly dying in an agonizing way. But wait, there's a small detail that keeps coming back every time the theme of time appears or someone mentions that time is running out. Somehow Marie and her powers are always involved, both in the first clue and in the third one, especially when they talk about miracles, and miracle is the perfect word to describe what Marie has done. But keep this in mind because this last element will connect directly to the next key clue. And the key clue is Ethan Slater. Yes, the actor who plays Godolkin in that short but crucial flashback we saw right at the beginning of the first episode. Now, this actor has been showing up a lot recently during the promotion of Gen V, and as you probably know, when a production of this scale starts its promotional tour, there are always those fancy events, parties, press conferences, red carpets, and early screenings for the public. And Ethan Slater appears in all of them, smiling, joking with the cast, signing autographs. And that alone might seem totally normal because technically he's part of the show, even if only for a few seconds of screen time. But there's something very strange hidden behind all of this, something that most people completely missed, and it comes from a short but revealing interview with Jazz Sinclair, the actress who plays Marie. During one of these events, she was asked what it was like working with Ethan Slater, and she said that it was amazing, that he's a great professional, very focused, and that there was a beautiful connection between them on set. Now, this is exactly the kind of phrase you expect from an actor during a promo interview: polite, respectful, positive. But here's the thing. Their characters shouldn't even exist in the same time period, because Godolkin's flashback is set nearly 100 years before the main story. So logically, these two should have never shared a single scene. So how did they work together? How did they even meet? The most reasonable answer to me is that in one way or another, Godolkin, The old man marked by flame scars will somehow rejuvenate, coming back to life in his full power and energy, regaining his body and his presence within the timeline of the current story. And this theory would solve multiple mysteries at once. It would explain Cypher's strange comments about time running out. It would justify this mysterious interview. And it would make perfect sense for Ethan Slater to return to the series, not just in a memory, but in the flesh. As a younger version of the same terrifying figure, it sounds crazy, I know, but this show has never been afraid to cross the line between impossible and miraculous. And this season more than ever is showing us that miracles sometimes are the rule rather than the exception. And those miracles are possible precisely because of Marie. Now let's take a moment to list what she's been capable of doing so far. Her main ability has always been blood control. You'll probably remember, if you've been following this channel for a while, that I once pointed out how Cypher seemed far more interested in Marie's power over blood than in her more obviously destructive abilities, because yes, her offensive potential is huge. She can literally make an opponent explode, but that's not what truly fascinates Cypher. What fascinates him is control. The ability to command life at its very source. And that ability has evolved so much throughout this season that we've now seen Marie literally resurrect her sister, which is something that completely changes the scale of power within this universe. And if we pay attention to the trailers and to what Kate says in certain scenes, it's pretty clear that Marie's powers are expanding even further, reaching a level where they can fix and heal, not only destroy. In the trailer for Episode 7, for example, we can see a scene that mirrors perfectly the one from the prison. Marie kneeling beside Polarity as if she's trying to repair his brain damage caused by his own powers. The framing, the lighting, even the emotion in her face is the same, which makes me think that she will actually manage to heal him, just like she brought her sister back, and the same could happen with Kate or with other characters who are hurt. In short, we're talking about a character who can resurrect, who can heal severe injuries, and who can potentially reverse physical decay itself, so why wouldn't someone like that be able to heal or even rejuvenate a body that is old and burning from within? Obviously, Marie won't do it on purpose, she's too pure for that. But the solution is simple, and you're probably already thinking about it. Because if Cypher can control others through his psychic powers, then it's not hard to imagine that he could use Marie as a vessel to channel her power directly onto himself. We've already seen that when Cypher takes over Jordan's body, he can still use his powers normally, so there's no reason why he couldn't do the same with Marie controlling her mind, forcing her to use her blood manipulation to bring him back to life, young, strong, and maybe even immortal. Now, this brings us to the theory of what this character might actually become. Because if he truly manages to rejuvenate and regain full control of his original body, then we need to ask ourselves what kind of powers he will have. And here I want to connect this with something I mentioned in another video. Because at this point, there's another clear reference to consider. I'm talking about the powers of Professor X from Marvel, Charles Xavier himself. And it's not a coincidence that in the original comics, Godolkin was conceived as a parody of Charles. Obviously, we're talking about two completely different worlds. But the core idea is the same. A rich, powerful, manipulative man who gathers young soups, trains them, controls them, and builds his own twisted version of a school for gifted children. Except that here, it's not a school of hope. It's a place of trauma and submission. In the comics, he creates the G-Men, an obvious parody of the X-Men, but twisted into something grotesque and morally broken, and that's exactly what the boys' universe loves to do. Taking a bright concept and turning it into something dark, sarcastic, and brutally real. Now, if we take this connection seriously, it's not hard to imagine that the show might give Godolkin powers similar to those of Charles Xavier. Psychic, telepathic, maybe even capable of total mental domination. Powers that fit perfectly with the idea of Cypher being a puppet, and Godolkin being the puppeteer pulling every single string from the shadows. And it would make sense even visually, since the character has always been portrayed as frail, old, and trapped inside a dying body, which again mirrors what we've seen with Professor X in the Fox movies, where we first meet him as an old man on a wheelchair, and then through the prequels, we see him young, confident, and full of energy. So Gen V could easily be building a parody not only of the character himself, but also of how that character was handled across decades of superhero cinema. A version that exaggerates everything, that pushes the concept to the limit, showing us both the mentor and the manipulator, the savior and the monster. And honestly, that duality, that moral distortion, would be one of the most The Boys things ever created. Now let's talk about the role of this character and why I'm emphasizing it, because if you notice there are only a few episodes left in this season. In Episode 7, Judging by the trailer, the main focus will be the search for the body, because it seems clear that Cypher will manage to move the body of what we can call, for now, the father figure, while in the other episodes the girls will somehow be involved in tracking it down, which means that I expect that the big reveal, or maybe even multiple revelations, will all happen in this episode. Leaving the actual confrontations for episode 8, but can all the complexity and depth of a character, as interesting as Godolkin, really be explored in just one episode? Now here I'm speaking a bit from intuition, there's no direct proof, but in my opinion Godolkin is a character we will definitely see again in Season 5 of The Boys. And one of the reasons why Gen V works so well as a spin-off is because they know exactly what they are doing. They embrace the fact that it's a secondary series, they don't try to hide it. In Season 1 of Gen V, we saw how some characters from The Boys Season 4 were included only in the background, minor roles, and yet they made the story richer. I'm talking about characters like Kate and Sam. Now, at this point, I think Godolkin could become part of the villain team, maybe even working alongside Sister Sage, because a villain built this way, a genius manipulator, it would feel completely wrong to defeat him in just one episode. They did an amazing job writing him, and it makes sense not to waste it. Maybe even save him for the big finale in Season 5 of The Boys. And I'm also of the opinion that Sister Sage could really use a right-hand person. And perhaps this could be a plotline not only for Season 5, but also for future spin-offs, because The Boys universe is clearly not ending with Season 5, and thinking about the possibilities, the way they could expand the story, introduce new powers, new dynamics, and completely unexpected alliances, makes me really excited for what's to come. So, guys, that's my take on Godolkin as of today. Let me know your thoughts about everything we've discussed as always in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.